Hey guys, Jay here from the Legion of Two here. I just thought I'd have a little video about one of my personal favourite characters, Shadrak Meduson of the Iron Hands, and how I feel he wasn't used very well. So, a warning for spoilers before we continue. I will be discussing the entire life of the character from start to finish. So if you don't want to know what happens to him, just pause the video, listen to the story, find out what happens to him, and then come back and you'll hear the discussion. So, despite Shadrak Meduson being a Iron Hands captain who is a relatively new character, introduced into the heresy, his plotline is intriguing as a Marine captain who is trying to unite the Shattered Legions using guerrilla tactics to try and disrupt the traitors. Originally, in the heresy lore, the Iron Hands really did not get much loving. In the context of what them, the Salamanders, and the Raven Guard did, they were pretty much out of the game after Istvan 5. You know, the basic story beats of some of the earlier heresy lore was Istvan 3, Istvan 5, Kelf, Prospero, Cygnus, and Earth. And with them getting slaughtered in Istvan 5 and the loss of Ferrus Manus, they did really just seem to disappear, and then they reappeared after the heresy was over with the second founding. At first, Meduson is only really mentioned in sort of background stories. I believe he gets a wee mention in Feet of Iron, but he really gets his own sort of little mini story in the story Little Horus, in which he's leading the defense of the planet of Dwell against the Sons of Horus who are there coming to try and take it. So it's the first indication that there is something going on with this character. I mean, the concept itself is quite interesting. A Iron Hand captain leading a guerrilla campaign. And that's something that more the Raven Guard would be into, so that was quite interesting from that point of view. He's then mentioned again in the story Vengeful Spirit, in which he sends 3 Fire Raptors to basically attempt an assassination of Horus, Mortarion, and Fulgrim. So it doesn't go very well, and they all obviously do survive, but to even have that character attempt something so ballsy, for lack of a better word, does really reinforce that they were going to do something with this character. He next appears in the Warhammer World exclusive novel Meduson, and this is where they really flesh out his backstory. You begin to learn about him, how he's lost one of his hands actually in that battle, how his real name was Smith, he's from Earth, and that he was actually a Stormwalker. He's one of the original Terran-born Stormwalkers who were commanded then by Amadeus Duquesne, and he considers Amadeus to be almost a father figure in a way. The character itself has quite a good independent streak, which makes him perfectly suited for his missions. He thinks for himself, which does cause a bit of a friction between him and the Iron Fathers, who were at that point in time trying to assume command of the chapter because Ferrus Manus had been killed in action. He doesn't really respect these guys in the sense that they're trying to control the Legion through a committee rather than having a singular force to fight against the traitors, because having a sort of control by committee means that there would be so much talking and arguing that when they would get round to actually committing an attack, the traitors would probably be on top of them. And this doesn't really work for him, because this doesn't help get the job done. If their objective is to fight and kill traitors, having them sit and argue about where to jump, where to attack, who to hit, does not really work. Even in the short story The Seventh Serpent, in which the crew of the Sisyphum believe that Shadrach is actually reinforcing them in an attempt to strike out against the Alpha Legion, shows the presence of the character, how even this small bunch of guerrilla fighters cut off from the main command structure still are aware that he is the war cry that the Shattered Legions are using to strike back against the traitors. By the time of the story The Either, Meduson has essentially become the boogeyman. He seems to be everywhere in an attempt to try and stop the traders by destroying their supply lines. What I would assume they were going for was potentially trying to make Meduson a sort of Spartacus of Warhammer. And it is an intriguing concept, this idea that every attack that happened, there would be Shadrak Meduson there or someone claiming to be him. And the traders would never know where they were getting hit from or which cell had the real Shadrach. There is even mention in the Either story that Tybalt Mar had destroyed Meduson and killed him at a battle of Arsac. Now, this battle had happened round about the same time as the Battle of Dwell and the failed assassination attempt on Horus. So, much to Tybalt's surprise, when he arrived at Dwell expecting laurels and glory to say, I killed Shadrak Meduson, he was informed by the Mournival that he'd actually failed and their Primarch had almost been killed. You would expect that maybe this was leading to somewhere in which maybe if they were going with the Spartacus concept, it would be sort of akin to Spartacus's final battle at Cantina, in which he was defeated by Crassus, and you think they're leading up to something big, and then they don't. For some reason, be it a deadline, fan disinterest, maybe I am in the minority and nobody really liked this character, or something akin to Game of Thrones clearing of the stage and just removing all secondary superfluous characters. And it was in a Nick Kime Salamander book as well. Now, I'm not going to say that I'm a fan of Nick Kime. His heresy stories have never really interested me, and I got very sick of hearing Vulcan lives, I think after his first book, so anything after that was an unbelievable slog to get through. But the way that Shadrach dies to me is extremely unceremonious. I'm wondering if I've missed something here, honestly, and I have listened to it and read it several times, but it just seems to come out of left field to me. While he isn't a big character in the heresy, he's obviously just a background character. I believed that he'd had enough establishment that he deserved a decent send-off. He's not Captain Loken, he's not Erebus, he's not Garrow, but I expected something, But instead it just seemed to be, let's just get rid of him. He dies in the book Old Earth. In the book, Tybalt Mar, who is basically Shadrach's nemesis because he has been ordered by Horus to destroy the Shattered Legions, which are preventing the traders from having decent supply lines on their march to Terra. In this book, he has finally got enough ships together to essentially surround Shadrach and defeat them once and for all. So you'd think that Shadrach would want to keep a cool head and use every tactic and resource he can think of, use the methods of the Salamanders, the methods of the Raven Guard, and the methods of the Iron Hands, all together into one cohesive unit to show potentially some early concepts of the Codex even, but he doesn't. Now, that being said, Nick Kime does try to give some reason for Shadrach's sudden lack of common sense. Shadrach mentions to Goran Gorgonson that he is not really sleeping that much, and though Marines can do that for some time, it doesn't last forever. Now, this, for the character, after hearing several stories, reading several stories about how he is as a person, this seems grossly irresponsible for the commander of a fleet of Shattered Legion ships who are then about to be attacked by the Sons of Horus. Now, there is a theory, and it may or may not be confirmed in the books, or it may just be sort of fan interpretation, that Meduson was starting to believe his own hype, that he was taking bigger risks because he had been so successful so far in disrupting the traders. But there is a big difference between floating your own boat, believing your own hype, and telling a Primarch that he has permission to leave your battleship. Now, this to me does not sound like the Shadrach character that had been established in the previous stories. The sort of cult of personality interpretation completely contradicts the previous Shadrach we had seen, who deliberately appointed a Raven Guard, a Salamander, and 2 Iron Hands to be his counsel to assist him in this guerrilla warfare. Now, I'm not going to go into every single small detail about the story itself, but I don't believe I'm exaggerating a lot here when I say that Shadrak Meduson was basically killed off because he was goaded by Tybalt Mar. He might as well have made chicken noises over the Vox at him, and this appears to have angered Shadrach so much that he feels that even though the battle may not be unwinnable, he thinks he can still have a go at it. So he gets mad, he boards the Lupercal Pursuivant, his entire force gets massacred and or captured, and when the apothecary Goran Gorgonson tells the Iron Hands and the Iron Fathers that they really need to go and rescue him, he's killed on the spot. At this point, it should be mentioned that in the Old Earth story, Nick Kime had all the Iron Fathers together, creating a sort of cult of the Gorgon, using pieces of Ferrus Manus. They openly attempted to usurp command of the Iron Hands from Shadrach, but when they were defeated, he forgave them. So the character who is on a self-imposed crusade to wipe out as many traitors as possible forgives the people in his own legion that have betrayed him, and it only results in him being betrayed again. Most people would probably consider this a big twist. I personally didn't. After seeing how they had acted the first time and he showed them mercy, you just expected that this would happen again. And because the author wanted it to happen, probably through to some sort of symbolic sense that he follows his gene father, Nick Kime has Shadrach get his head cut off on the Lupercal Pursuivant. You could consider it a tragedy, but I was just personally confused. How and why did the author think this was a good way to kill Shadrach off? It almost reads like spite. Did Nick Kime kill Shadrach off because another author had annoyed him? Did he just not like the character and leapt at the chance to kill him off? Or was there another reason? There is a rumour going about, though it can't really be independently verified, that Meduson was only put into the book as a B-plot because Old Earth had not reached its word count and would have basically been classed as a novella and not a main story. Instead of having this character have a decent send-off in a book potentially maybe completely about the Shattered Legions, he is just the B-plot in another one of the Salamander books where everybody is constantly saying Vulcan lives. The character Shadrach had the potential to be a rather standout character, just like Garrow, Tylos Rubio, Captain Loken. Instead, he just gets unceremoniously killed in a Salamander book. He and we deserved better. But maybe I'm just overthinking it. Tell me what you think. Did you think the character was killed off poorly? Did you think he went out well? Am I missing something? Are you a fan of how it went? Are you not? Leave a wee comment in the comment section below and tell me what you think. And as usual, like I've said before in my previous video, like, follow, subscribe, turn on the notifications, and thanks for listening.